you're rolling, and then you can just get lined up and watch. Hang on, I've got to do some show.
Take your seat. You can't be the director and the...
I can do whatever the fuck I want to.
Alright, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
I don't want to talk too much about bands.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about the genre itself.
Yeah.
Where we reference bands,
Yeah.
not talking too much about the bands.
Yeah.
If you guys get what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
Well, guide us, because we're probably
Yes.
going to go fucking wildly off topic and
Yeah.
contradict each
And
other.
also, this is another question. I mean, I can be rather verbose at sometimes. So, do you want short answers, or do you want like long?
I think I'll leave that actually to Malcolm because
I'm just going to cut you off if you start talking cunt.
Yes. I'd like to introduce Malcolm Burger, musician extraordinaire from like dating back to the days of Gremlin, Revelers, and more currently Subverse and Ashes at My Grave. You've
And
also had and Axon, and you've had a little bit of time with Terminatrix too. Then we've got Justin Bedford, who has a history with A Walk with the Wicked. But are there any other bands that we should...
Ashes.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes. Alright, which hasn't really seen the light of day yet. We just also want to mention the League of Doom. I suppose it would be appropriate to introduce you as like the chairman
That's supposed to say, yeah.
or president or whatever title it is that you would give to this, but you're definitely the driving force behind that which we know as the League of Doom.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Well, maybe you could explain what it is in a nutshell.
Yes. Well, sorry. What I'm saying here is not really for on the record. It's just that I've got my facts when I start punching things out. So I think when we break this into sections now, history of the genre in South Africa, current state. That's when I'd like to bring League of Doom in, because that's a fairly new development.
Yeah.
So I think starting with it, we'd say, right, doom metal. Does doom metal have to be doom metal, or is doom itself actually like a genre which is standalone, would you say? Or is doom and metal, or has it been traditionally like kind of one thing?
Well, it certainly comes from metal background. I think some of the more recent interpretations that you could certainly attribute to being doom are very unmetal. But there's always going to be that undercurrent of heaviness about them. I mean, that's what defines it. Heavy.
I think at the end of the day, it's about an aesthetic, right? And doom always carries with it this atmosphere of something dreadful, something foreboding. Got a very occult sort of feeling to it in a sense. It's got something macabre and sorrowful and romantic, and those sort of ideas can filter through to not just metal, but in many other forms as well. But
all right.
It's got a strong metal background. Yeah.
So when we, that probably describes in a nutshell the sort of essence of doom. But I think we'll probably open that essence up a bit more as we chat. But having touched on that, let's talk about the sort of origins as best we know. Where did this like genre or subgenre sort of like burst out
his
from?
version and then my version.
Yes.
So, from my understanding and the way I've sort of looked into it, as with all things in metal, it starts with Black Sabbath, really. With to call Black Sabbath a doom band would be incorrect, because they're not. But it's the sound that they came up with, especially in their first two albums. Slow, down-tuned guitars, use of tritones to get that atmosphere in the music and to make it feel something off-kilter. And it was that sort of spawned a whole bunch of musicians that thought, hey, we really like that sound, let's explore that more. And from there it developed into the early sort of what's called the traditional doom bands. We talk about bands like Witchfinder General or Saint Vitus as examples. But even then it wasn't really a distinct genre yet.
Yeah.
That's why I say it really only started with the three the Peaceful Three, because they stitched all those influences together into something that was the first time it was really something as a subgenre on its own.
Sorry, just give us a moment there. Just describe the Peaceful Three.
From the awful part of England in the north, where Sabbath is from.
The gloomy north.
The original three bands that were, what are they? Paradise Lost, Modern Bride, and Anathema all started that very dark, particularly slow and heavy form of death doom. Which is where I kind of think it became an entity unto itself. I mean, we have had this. I mean, he thinks it's all Candlemas, and
yes.
but I think possibly because I'm not a big fan of more sort of operatic style of vocal, I've always disregarded that. So I'm speaking purely from a personal opinion.
Cool.
This side of things.
But I think having referenced what the Peaceful Three was, let's hear what you were going to say about that.
I mean, at the end of I think it's quite unanimous in this regard that the first time that the phrase doom metal came about was because of Candlemass's album Epicus Dominicus Metallicus, and they classified themselves as epic doom metal. And I think only afterwards people thought, hey, doom metal's a cool name to describe this, and they were an epic version of doom metal. But essentially it's heavy metal with some different styles in what they're playing. But from there, it was the whole bunch of fusion genres came about where they were mixing that traditional doom style with death metal, which would come about to where the Peaceful Three came about, or more sort of stoner rock, so you got your psychedelic doom bands and stoner doom
Sorry,
bands.
do you know offhand what year Epicus Doomicus Metallicus?
I think it is 84. I could be wrong.
Okay, so that did precede the Peaceful Three.
They all founded in sort of 89, 90, around there. All the first releases were around those years. So.
And also, if you look at all those original releases, their first albums under artists that they that they were inspired by, Candlemass's name does pop up.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. I mean,
despite the Peaceful Three all sounding distinctly more death metal,
of course,
in those early years.
Well,
but
the death metal had reached its peak before they began their thing. So it was a natural progression of a subgenre kind of thing.
That's where what you said, death doom, probably resonates.
Yeah.
But they very quickly went. Look, I mean, they all started out as traditional fucking metal bands. I mean, guys from Modern Bride were in a band called Silosis or some shit, which is like a thrash death kind of outfit. But they very quickly latched onto something that was a hell of a lot darker and slower and more emotive. Yeah. Because you had Bay Area thrash and you had fucking whatever death movement, and it was all about technicality and speed and aggression. And then these guys come along with poetic lyrics,
I think,
which was something very new at the time.
Emotive being a key word.
Because look, I mean, it is all about atmosphere, like you said. Just they had this way of interpreting and creating this fucking wallowing sadness that resonates with a lot of people, and they hadn't done so before.
The way I've always distinguished it myself is that I see, very, very much, genres like death metal to be, straight up the descriptions of what people do. It says, I am going to do this, I do this, and I'm going to, bash your brains in, or whatever the hell you want to say. But then when it comes to doom, it sort of asks the questions of why somebody's doing it. Yes. And it explores the psyche of a person doing something. And normally the image that comes out is something dark.
No, that's exactly it. When
it's looking beyond that physical of somebody doing, it's trying to interpret why.
All metal and all rock has always been about anger and anguish and loss, and the typical sort of day-to-day. But like you said, it takes it a step further with doom. It explores, without having a bad complexion and a cupcake, the emotion behind that. I mean, what makes someone... How do you react to loss in your life? How do you deal with your anger or whatever?
I mean, just hearing what Justin wrote, sort of brought up there, two song titles immediately leapt into my mind. And the one was cannibal corpse, hammer smashed face.
Yeah.
It's like very literal, blunt, and like, like abrupt.
Yeah.
But then you get something like My Dying Bride, the sexuality of bereavement.
Yeah.
It like gives us two very different approaches to an expression. And
exactly.
I think how you've described it as being, the one is this is, and the other one is this is why.
Yeah.
Like I think those two titles for me just sprang into mind and said, this makes sense. It's a good statement. Yeah. Then what about, we've referenced a few bands. What about if we reference something like Electric Wizard, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, this is...
Then it branches off into the stoner side of things.
Yeah, so I think this is why I always analyse Doom as the originators being that Black Sabbath-y, Witchfinder General sound, and then becoming into a whole bunch of fusion genres, which mix different elements of music to create something unique, but still having that same core Doom feeling towards it, especially musically with this, tritone, etc. But I think bands like Electric Wizard, whilst they sound completely different to a band like My Dying Bride, they're still Doom because they're also taking reference to that Black Sabbath early sound and the imagery of what things they're talking about or singing about rather are still there, and it's got that that sludgy sort of dirty.
A lot of it's got to do with the fact that Doom is traditionally also defined by its pace.
Of course,
these
low-tuned
most metal is about trying to express your aggression, where Doom, in whatever form, it's sludge or romantic or whatever, is about pulling back the pace, and that exacerbates the...
But I think it's just a different way of
atmosphere.
expressing it, because if you listen to countless My Dying Bride songs, to quote them again, there's a lot of aggression in what they're saying. It's just the way that it's brought across.
I'm saying musically,
yeah,
something like Electric Wizard would definitely fall under the subgenre of Doom because it's kind of more pedestrian.
Yeah.
There isn't a hell of a lot of in-your-face aggression musically.
There's a joke Justin shared with me once.
Who's Justin?
Sorry, Biggie. There's something along the lines of like, if you can't take a nap between snare strokes, then it's not Doom.
The very first time, the guy who ended up being our stage manager back in Greenwich days, we brought him into a rehearsal once, and his only comment was, "You're fucking slow and boost heavy."
Yeah.
And I think that heavy sound is overall very important in Doom, whether it be slow but extremely heavy, sonically, or just the lyrics and the emotions behind it. It's also slow and heavy. It's just got a lot of. It's a very weighted music
behind it.
Yeah, there's got a weight behind it in every sort of sense. And when bands might sound different, but then when you listen to them, and they still give you that same feeling behind it. It's quite. It's difficult to pinpoint in many ways beyond musically why two bands are doom metal.
They share kind of gravitas.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask, based on that you're now describing kind of in more detail the music itself. I mean, my own introduction to the genre, I think where I found the appeal for myself personally, and this is where I want to actually get a bit more from Malcolm on, because you brought up the Peaceful 3, which was my entry. But for me, what I always found about that particular sound of music, I didn't know it at that time to be called Doom. But what I noticed about those bands, which was different from what other heavy metal I was listening to at the time, which was mostly death, was there was a blend of what I would have called, and still call, beauty and brutality.
Definitely.
The thing,
brought together.
You were saying you grew up with death metal and so on. At the time, I'd grown up with traditional sort of more thrashy bands like Slayer and Metallica, but I'd always, you know, most of my friends at school would like give me shit about it, but all the goth stuff like Fields and the Nephilim and Sisters of Mercy. So someone just pitched up at school with a tape one day after it was the Gothic album, Paradise Lost. And also just to come back to naming it, they were actually, of the three, they were never known as a doom band in the beginning. They were called gothic metal. They coined the phrase gothic metal, kind of thing. So they slapped the two together, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm sold." That was the point in my life where I didn't look back. And obviously, because of the association with the three, it took a little while to get into the other two. I think Anathema almost came first, because I remember being introduced to My Dying Bride, and I was telling you this in the car on the way here, Jerome from Slayer and Supernature goes, "Oh, you'll really like this," and he puts on Turn Loose the Swans, and I was like, "Fuck, am I listening?" But then, put it off. Anyway, later, like a week later, I'm at Raffles, and Greg, who played guitar for VOD, was playing CME 1993, and I fell in love with it. And I was like, "Fuck, I have to have." I thought it was the Swans, you know, idiot that I am. And I ended up buying that disc off Jerome, and that was like, became the blueprint of I was like, I want to make music like this. That was the life-changing sort of area.
Turn Loose the Swans.
Turn Loose the Swans, specifically. Gothic, Paradise Lost. And then, like I said, Anathema had always kind of been there, because they were part of that.
Yeah.
If you were buying that album or getting that album, they came. It was a nice package deal, because it covered not only just the Anathema at the time was the heaviest of the three, funnily enough, by some distance, and they were really the darkest and slowest. And then My Dying Bride had a slight bit more art to their heavy and slowness, and Paradise Lost was the far more melodic, songwriting type of band. And they all developed in different ways.
Yeah, in their own unique ways.
But they all were always seen as the originators of a movement.
Mine was fairly similar, my experience. I mean, I grew up listening to, you know, from alternative music point of view, it was black metal and old school goth, pretty much. And, you know, I remember I was playing Malcolm this as well, on an old IRC channel in Northlands, and spoke to this guy called Marlon, and I asked him, told him what
Marlon
music.
van der Linde.
Yeah, I explained to him the type of music that I liked, and he was like, "Dude, you gotta listen to this." And I remember I was saying, Malcolm, I saw the name, I was like, My Dying Bride. That sounds like a horrible name for a band.
I thought it was an awesome name.
I don't know. I thought it was stupid, and he links me the Cry of Mankind music video. And when I listened to that, I just knew
sold.
I was sold. It spoke to me, as you said, about this balance, and it captured everything that I was looking for, and I finally found that feeling in music. You know, like I found it briefly in other genres of music, the fleeting moments. But when I listened to a full album of There Were My Start, and I sort of expanded fully from there, obviously to. Anathema, Paradise Lost, and but also went the other route, you know, going towards the traditional side of the doom genre, and it's that was really
It was quite exciting in those times, because, like you said, you went almost backwards, and you started exploring where all that came from. But at the same time, there was some wonderful bands coming out, like Moonspell and Theatre of Tragedy and whatnot. You know. Fuck, it was like this whole world opening up. You know, because most of the bands that we were listening to, stuff like Sisters of Mercy was already a non-entity, basically. They'd finished their recording careers, and you'd go, fuck, man, this guy... But to be also, I mean, when I came about into it... We were pre-internet, remember?
Exactly. I mean, I had a problem just getting hold of material, because, I mean, first of all, Marlon was the only outlet that I knew for to get it. And he sent me one video.
He didn't come to CD Select very
long. And I ended up I remember Theo was my maths teacher, and I remember telling him, oh no, like going to Mass, and I told him, you know, I found out this band, and he said, oh, okay, cool, listen to this, and he gave me a couple of tapes from the Shadow Chamber, which was recorded in Stellenbosch, there, a little radio station there, and then also that's how I discovered Theatre of Tragedy, and I was sold.
Yeah, it's funny that you reference Marlon, because that guy was a fantastic resource for underground music.
Yeah.
Like, I think the fact that you and I knew him at different times makes him something of a legend for like being a resource for underground music.
But the weird thing is that I've met the guy I think twice in my life, and that little interaction was pretty much like I wouldn't say we were close to anything. I just knew him through that, and some reason he decided to give me My Dying Bride, and that was I'm ever thankful for that.
Yeah. But I wanted to also just touch on what I was saying about how for me there was this bringing together of the beauty and the brutality. And what's funny is you also mentioned Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
Kind of unrelated, but in my knowledge directly related in that I remember when I first got into Paradise Lost, it was Draconian Times. And I was quite taken by how amazing this album sounded. It was unlike something I'd heard before, yet at the same time it was like things I'd heard before.
Yes.
And I read it somewhere which summed it up for me perfectly. It was like a blend between Sisters of Mercy and Metallica.
Yeah,
the thing with what drew people to it at the time was it had all the traditional aspects of metal. I mean, you know, loud, overdriven twin guitars, very sort of bombastic drumming, like driving bass lines. But what made it stand apart was the sort of post-gothic, you know, when the vocalists came into their own and started not doing just guttural roars the whole time.
Yeah.
But it was the orchestration that was added to it, which made it stand out. That specifically, you know, things like choirs and organs that were the staple for sort of 80s and 90s goth, which is why people drew that comparison. And that's probably where your whole Candlemass thing comes in.
And that's also where I think, you know, like what struck me the first time I heard My Dying Bride was also
Martin Powell's God.
It was death metal music, but there was this new element in it which was a violin.
Yeah, and they weren't shy to just slow a section down just for dramatic effect kind of thing.
But I would also argue that that very fact was also a negative fact, at least locally, in the local scene, because of it. And the reason why I say that, that's a different argument altogether here. But at least from my time, when I was starting to go out and go to places, and early 2000s, very little was going on at that point.
Well, look, let's.
It's not dance music, so it's not going to create a spark at the local.
This is the point. It acted negatively against itself because, you know, like I would go out to clubs and I would go to at a metal party and I'd ask the DJ, "Hey, do you have this doom band or them doom band?" And they'll be like, "No, go to a goth party for that sort of thing."
Yeah.
And then I'd go to a goth party and I would say, "Hey, do you have this band?" And then they're like, "No, that's too heavy for what we're playing."
And this is probably a nice transition into what you were going to go into, like the bands sometime. We had that problem.
Yeah.
We played to the metalheads and we were called pussies.
Yeah.
We played to the goths and they were going, "Oh my god, it's too loud."
Stop. Let's use this as the opportunity to move on to the next section of what we wanted to talk about, which would be titled History of Doom in South Africa.
That's all. Okay.
Alright, I'll put this on my lap. How's that?
We're still rolling though.
We're still rolling. You can go take your seat.
Sorry, I forgot my bongo drums. Because bongo drums are essential to Doom.
Yeah.
Do it.
Alright, Justin, maybe you can just take your cue again.